podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, friends. My name is Ralph Amsden, and you are listening to the Forkcast on the 1012 Podcast Network. Hope everybody's had a good week. 4-1. That's exciting. Beating Kansas, 4-point win. I didn't nail the score. I almost nailed the score, 28-24. However, 4-point win. Feel good about that. Went about the way that I thought it would. Very back and forth. Cam Scattaboo is the absolute man. Not sure I'm 100% sold on some of those targeting calls. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But first, I want to remind you that the Forkcast is brought to you by Charlie Hustle Clothing Company, a vintage-inspired clothing company based out of Kansas City that specializes in collegiate and hometown apparel. Charlie Hustle loves the Big 12 Conference and wants every Big 12 fan to be the best dressed this season with their wide selection of officially licensed collegiate apparel. That means us. That means Arizona State University. And you can use the promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. That's the word 10, T-E-N, and the numbers 12 and 15. 10, 12, 15 for 15% off all non-sale items with more than 30 schools to choose from, including ours, and all 16 Big 12 schools, of which we are one. They've got us covered with our choice of collegiate apparel needs. Shop today at www.charliehustle.com. Use the promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. Again, that's charliehustle.com, promo code 101215 for 15% off all non-sale items. Look like a winner, dress like a winner, feel like a winner. Speaking of the way we're dressed, that's something we're going to get into today. We'll have a special guest segment talking about Arizona State's choice. I'm doing air quotes. This is an audio medium. Air quotes are not a good idea. But Arizona State's choice to wear maroon during the blackout on Friday night to play against Utah. There's an explanation for it. And we will get into that as well. We will lead off with recapping Arizona State's 35-31 win over Kansas. We'll preview this Utah game. We'll get to our Todd of the week and go over our Sun Devil signs. And finally, to end this whole thing, I will give my prediction. Let's go ahead and get into Arizona State's 35-31 win over the Kansas Jayhawks at Mountain America Stadium. All right, so incredible game on Saturday night. I did get a lot of texts from Arizona State fans, probably about close to double digits on the text message meter in the first half. People were not very confident in the direction of Arizona State. People were unsatisfied with the defense. There was some despair happening. Now that is very common to Arizona State football in recent years, living and dying with every play. Totally understandable. Football game is 60 minutes. On the anniversary of the Hail Mary, we should probably have some level of respect for the idea that it's not over till it's over. But we are a product of our conditions, and it has not been a very fun past few years. So, when the game starts off slow, much like against Texas State, my phone starts blowing up, and it's something that in the moment sometimes I answer, sometimes I don't. And in this game, I was very I was very curious because it wasn't necessarily going the way that I thought it would. Not that I think that my opinion is the end all be all of things, but I had just finished watching 4 Kansas games in a row, and they didn't come out looking like the Kansas team that I thought that they would be. They're kind of notoriously slow starters, and they look pretty good in the first half, and they looked like they had shored up some of their downfield passing issues. The run game looked the way that I thought it would. Their defense looked exactly how I thought it would. But I thought that, I thought that Jeff Grimes deserves a little bit of credit for getting this offense going. The fans were on his back, and they didn't have a lot of confidence in him, in the first 5 games of the season. For a Kansas team that had first place votes to go 1-4 to start the season, of course they're going to come in frustrated. Them being 1-5 now is wild. And when you consider that, I think there were 5 teams that got first place votes in the Big 12. I think they're a combined 3-9 in conference right now. So the Big 12, I mean, anything could happen. I think that makes for very interesting, fascinating football. But if you're a fan of it, it's kind of like the old Bill Walton rule. If Bill Walton was calling a game with Dave Pasch on the Pac-12 network and you had no investment in the game whatsoever, how fun was that, right? But if you were watching the game because you had any investment, emotional or financial, in it whatsoever, he was a little bit annoying. it was too much, right? And so the parity of the Big 12, it's going to make some fan bases feel like they live and die with every play. So I don't blame Arizona State fans for hanging on every single thing, as long as you celebrate the wins. And I hope the Arizona State fans had a great weekend, a great week celebrating this win. Now let's get into what actually happened in this game. And what we have to really start with is the quarterback position. I've been critical of Sam Leavitt. I hope constructively critical. At the end of the day, this podcast means nothing. My voice means nothing. I control nothing. I understand that. And that's not a reminder for anyone listening to me. They know that too. It's a little mantra to keep me from ever believing like I matter more than I do. I love Arizona State University. I love talking about Arizona State University. I love being in community with other people who care about Arizona State University. I have a cool platform, thanks to the 1012 Network, to be able to talk about this college football and basketball team. However, I'm under no impression that my opinion is going to alter anything about the way things are done. Came into this season believing that Trenton Bourguet would be the best person for the job. Still believe that to this day, that the best chance to win now and not have to undergo, growing pains would be to go with the person who can move the ball with the vertical passing game. But that's not the direction that Arizona State chose to go. And so I wrote something for Sports 360 AZ asking people to wait 4 games, exercise patience, and then, kind of make a decision on what needs to happen from there. I felt after 4 games, it was pretty evident that if Arizona State wanted to reach some pretty special heights this year, they're going to need improved quarterback play. But they had a pretty decent shot at a bowl going with the way that things are going right now. So for Sam Leavitt to throw 4 touchdown passes in this game, and if we're being really, really honest, for most of the issues in this game to be receiver related, and for the accuracy issues to actually be few and far between, massive, massive leap forward. Now, does 14 of 24 for 157 yards look sexy on its face? No. And I complained at length that Arizona State wasn't getting as many receivers as it needed to involved. Does, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, is 9 better than 8 as far as wide receiver receptions? Not really. But he showed command of the offense. He was nails in the fourth quarter. Nobody can deny that. The interception, I didn't really feel like, that it happens. It's not, I don't really put that one on him too much. And he showed the reason that they're comfortable with him is his ability to extend plays with his legs. 10 carries for 77 yards is huge. It made the difference. More than his 4 touchdowns, the 77 yards rushing made the absolute biggest difference. Now, Kansas, not the greatest defensive team in the entire world, but for Arizona State to go over 300 yards rushing as a team was enormous. To average 7 yards a carry as a team, that's huge. To get anything in the passing game at this point, I think is a luxury. And that's, again, I'm not disparaging Sam Leavitt. He is young. If he's going to improve, then, let's see. But he made some throws that absolutely counted. And I think the biggest credit to Sam Leavitt in this game is that, I've talked a lot about how, yes, Sam Leavitt does need to be in rhythm, but the receivers also deserve that grace extended to them. It's harder for them to perform when they haven't been given opportunities to also get in rhythm. Jordan Tyson had a schizophrenic, manic bipolar game where he made several mistakes, but also scored 2 touchdowns and caught the game-winning touchdown pass. And that's a big part of what I'm talking about, of allowing somebody to get into a rhythm. Not just the quarterback, but your receivers as well need an opportunity. Now, that obviously that can be extended to every position on the field. Cam Scadaboo still taking the vast majority of the running back carries. His touches are still far probably beyond what Arizona State would like them to ideally be, but he's been able to handle it. He had 27 touches in this game, and I believe a tackle on special teams, which was completely insane. But yeah, I wanted to give credit to Jordan Tyson, because he didn't have the best game in the world, but he kept his head in the game, ends up with 2 receiving touchdowns, and you got to see glimpses of what he was a couple of years ago at Colorado. And I have another show. It's called the College Football Apostles. It used to be called the Pac-12 Apostles, back when the Pac-12 was a thing. When Jordan Tyson was a freshman at Colorado, I showered this guy with praise in every single episode of that show. I strongly believe that he's a unique talent, could be a top 5 to 7 receiver in the Big 12 if given the opportunity to do so. Very cool to see him flash some of that talent in this game, even if he made a couple of blocking, fumbling, receiving mistakes. But for the most part, he has been very good all season and just kind of waiting on his opportunity. But I've said it gets really tough. It gets really tough when you're not getting consistent opportunities. I'm sure a lot of receivers feel the same way. The best thing about them having those feelings is they are numbed quite a bit by the fact that Arizona State is 4-1, could conceivably be 5-0 if they didn't have such a disastrous start in Lubbock. And now they have the opportunity to take on another team that many thought would be the class of the Big 12 in Utah. And we'll get into Utah here in a little bit. But let's get into this game. Some of the players that performed well, some of the things that I really liked, some of the things that I noticed people talking about online during this game. Cam Scadaboo had some space there at the line of scrimmage. He wasn't just breaking tackles in the backfield this entire time. So you have to give credit to the offensive line. I thought that they did a fantastic job. Again, with Sam Leavitt, his poise and his legs were great. He made the throws that mattered at the end of the game. To see him celebrate with his teammates was very cool, because, they had kind of a rocky, interesting start. He came in for the spring, didn't necessarily love Tempe, didn't necessarily rub his teammates the right way, had to work on his leadership. It's still a work in progress. But you can't get experience as a leader unless you're given that experience to lead. And that was Kenny Dillingham's theory moving into this season, right? So I thought he played with him in incredible poise. Riverboat Kenny is still a thing. Canyon Floyd with a fake punt pass for 15 yards is a little surprise to Clayton Smith. Shout out to Clayton Smith. That was pretty wild. And then I thought in the running game, though, I would like to have seen DeCarlos Brooks get more touches. I thought Raleek Brown showed some flashes of what he's going to be able to do for Arizona State down the line. It was cool to see them involve receivers, like Jake Smith, even though that play didn't go very well, lost 11 yards, and Melquan Stovall. In the running game, it's good to keep your opponents guessing and not have them really know who's going to get the ball at any given time. And then again, the receivers, you got to give Shimon Mateer credit for scoring again on a catch and run. He's having a decent little season at tight end, and I'm looking forward to seeing that continue. And then, Jordan Tyson is really the receiver that sticks out, and it was cool to see Xavier Guillory get that haul in a one-handed touchdown catch as well. So nothing but praise for the offense, even though it was kind of slow going there for a while. They did more damage in the fourth quarter than they did in the entire game leading up to that. However, they were consistently moving the ball, right? The 2 turnovers, not great. Some of the officiating, not great, but they consistently moved the ball in this game, which is what made me think if they had the ability to finish, they're going to blow the lid off this thing. And it finally ended up happening in the fourth quarter. It did not look like Arizona State could be stopped. And it was a lot of fun to watch. I hope you stuck through it for that fourth quarter and went through the whole roller coaster of emotions of every single lead change, including that last 16 seconds when I accidentally tweeted 4-1 before the clock hit all zeros. I had a couple of people mad at me for that. Of course, you don't want to jinx the game, but that last 16 seconds lasted a very long time. And the fact that Kansas even had a shot on a Hail Mary, yikes. But let's talk about that Kansas offense. They're good. I hope that I gave a decent preview for anybody who listened, that Jalen Daniels was very talented, had the ability to throw, but, had some risky behavior. The fact that he went without an interception was a little bit of a surprise. Their running backs were very, very dangerous. They did not run the ball enough, in my opinion. Jalen Daniels had the one big run, but for the most part, Arizona State bottled him up. Loved to see that in the run game. Their receivers, they got Quentin Skinner very involved in this game, but for the most part, everybody else felt like was held in check. They talked a lot about Devin Neal being this dual threat. He had 108 total yards and a touchdown. Could have been a lot worse. Trust me on that. And Luke Grimm's a very talented wide receiver. They highlighted him a lot on the broadcast. He finished with 3 catches for 37 yards. You'll love to see that, right? The guys on Kansas's defense that I gave the most praise to were their cornerbacks, Kobe Bryant and I believe Mello Dotson, and both of them mighty struggle bus time, which I'm thankful for as an Arizona State fan, but just a terrible defensive performance for most of University of Kansas's squad. If it wasn't for OJ Burrows and JB Brown bringing down Cam Scatterbo every other time, this game would have got out of hand a lot quicker. But as far as I want to get into this officiating real quick, I just want to touch on it. I'm going to be honest. I don't like to bash the officiating much. The targeting calls on Arizona State's defense were not egregious. They were not. The way that they were called left a bad taste in my mouth. Yes, I saw Miles Rouser. If Miles Rouser doesn't go off sides, does Jalen Daniels take that hit and do we get somebody booted? Probably not. I didn't think that was all that bad of a hit anyway. The other targeting, I can see why they called it. It shouldn't have been called, in my opinion. Should it have been overturned? I don't know if you can once you throw that flag, but here's the deal. The only reason that Keyshawn Elliott was in that position is because he dropped an interception. So, Arizona State never should have been in that position in the first place. It's going to suck to be missing multiple players for the first half of the Utah game. That's terrible. But I don't blame Clayton Smith. I don't blame Keyshawn Elliott. I don't think any of it was dirty. Lance Leopold, I think he did what he had to do running out on the field to protect his player. Given what actually happened, I think it would be something he defended if one of his players did it. But that's your guy. That's your quarterback. So yeah, run out on the field, throw a tantrum. You have every right to do so. The play, I wish they had been a lot more clear that there was a guy unabated to the quarterback and blown that play dead. There's a difference between an offsides call where you get a free play and an offsides call that is so egregious that you probably just need to blow the play dead. And so, I don't think the game was very well officiated, but I'm not going to get on the refs for the targeting. I think that was the primary complaint. I will get on the refs for this. On Kansas's second and third touchdowns, on the second and third touchdowns of the game, so the one that came in the second quarter and the one that came early in the fourth quarter, there was blatant holding, like hook and hold, turning the defender. Those should be very, very obvious. Very obvious. I would have been grateful if I saw that Arizona State did the same and got away with it. I did not. I don't feel like there was equal weight of incompetence when it came to this officiating crew. I do believe that it adversely affected Arizona State a great deal. And I'd be the first to admit when Arizona State gets a call thrown their way, it doesn't hurt me to admit that Arizona State gets a call that maybe it shouldn't. Miles Rouser's been the beneficiary of two of those this year. Both, I think, in the Texas State game. So, I try to be as objective as possible. Blatant holding on Kansas's second and third touchdown to the point where, I was just wondering why Arizona State didn't repay the favor. Because if you're allowed to hook and hold and turn somebody's body, then you should do that on every play if that's a privilege that's afforded to you. Again, the targetings, I think, I get it, but I don't agree. And I know that sometimes that's not enough for some Arizona State fans. They want you to be as upset as they are. That stuff's going to happen. Targeting's weird. It was weird all over the country. But Arizona State gets a win. And I think that that's really important. And Kenny Dillingham really propped this win up as a big touchstone moment for Sam Leavitt. We will see if that continues to be true. What it really was further proof that Cam Skattebo, he's an NFL guy, and he is the rock of this team from which you are able to build on anything. Sam Leavitt is successful because of Cam Skattebo. The offensive line looks even better, when he breaks tackles and gives them more confidence, gets them more sight, gets more people playing in the box, gives opportunities to the wide receivers, gives the defense rest and makes sure that they're more fresh every single time they go out there. Gives them juice on special teams. He's legit. He's the real deal. I hope they keep feeding him. He's on pace right now for the number 2 rushing season in Arizona State football history. And I really hope they go for the gold. I really do. Love Eno Benjamin, but records are made to be broken. And would love to see him do it and get the national credit that he deserves. One last thing on this Arizona State versus Kansas game that I wanted to touch on before we move on to previewing Utah. This is what this game was very indicative of what the Big 12 will be like. Kansas is still ranked ahead of Arizona State in the ESPN Football Power Index rankings, even though they're 1-5, Arizona State's 4-1, and they won head to head, right? And that seems nonsensical, but if you watch this game, what you saw was two very evenly matched teams. And that's the funny thing about the Big 12 is the level at which most of these teams recruit, which is almost 80 to 90% made up of 3-star recruits. And that other 10 to 20% with Texas and Oklahoma out of the conference, it's not 4 stars. We're talking 2 stars, right? So when it's a bunch of people who all had sort of the same level of accolade out of high school, you never know what could happen from week to week. Parity is exciting if you are watching the NFL as a casual observer. It's frustrating if you want your team to be dominant year in and year out. And so I want people to know that this could be every Arizona State game this season in conference. That's just Big 12 football. A dominant win is almost much more of a surprise than a back and forth game. It really is. And anything could happen. Arizona has beaten Utah. Colorado went to UCF and shut down their running game. Never in a million years would have I thought that was possible. So I hope you can stomach, for those of you that that watch this game. I would pose you this question. I think you would much rather be Arizona State at the end of a 35-31 win with rough officiating and several fourth quarter lead changes than you would have been happy to be a Cal fan on Saturday and to dominate for 3.5 quarters, dominate up 3-4 scores and lose. Right. So like that early fun is not always what it's all about. So it could be worse. It could be weirder. 4-1's a pretty great place to be. Now let's get into this game against the University of Utah. All right. So let's get into this Utah game. Just finished hosting Sun Devil Spaces. Did it on a 1-day delay Thursday night. This week had a great community. We got really deep into the weeds on the kind of the history of this Utah football team, whether or not people believe that it's a rival. Some people like me, I feel like it is a budding rivalry. I feel like it is a rivalry. It might be a recent one, but I feel like it is. And a lot of people feel like that's not the case at all. The standard for rivalry for them is very much how they feel about University of Arizona, how they want to beat them in all sports, how they never want them to win any games. And I get that. I understand why people would feel differently. I do consider them to be one. And this is a game that I look for on the calendar every single year, right after that Arizona game, which you usually know when that game is going to be. So this was not a super friendly scheduling for Arizona State. It's a Friday night game. Friday night games are awful. Playing college football on Friday night is terrible. Love that Arizona State's going to get the eyes, and the program recognition, so long as they perform well. You don't want to get busted on national television on a Friday night where people can just turn over to Law and Order SVU or something. So, but it is a good opportunity, but Utah is coming off of a bye week. That's not great. And it's on a Friday night and the students are on fall break. So it's, it could be a much better situation for Arizona State. But at least it's at home and at least they still have the heat. But this is a very interesting matchup for Arizona State because they lost 55-3 last year. It was not close. Arizona State wasn't just a shell of themselves. They were a shell of a football team. They did not have much left to offer at the end of the year last year against University of Utah. Will Utah have Cam Rising? That's the big topic. Utah has lied about whether Cam Rising has been healthy a lot. I think that maybe there's a chance he doesn't play, but Brett McMurphy is reported that he is playing. Brett McMurphy also reported that he was playing last year against UCLA, and Cam Rising did not play at all last year, not once. So, he's kind of injury prone. I remember him visiting Arizona State on an official visit. His brother, Tyson Rising, was an Arizona State Sun Devil, a backup offensive lineman. He came out to Arizona State on a visit, and if I remember correctly, he was hurt then. He missed his senior year of high school football, and then I think got hurt again at Texas, and then again at Utah, missed all of last year, and now with the finger, it's mostly been knee issues for him. He's a very good player. He has 7 touchdowns, no interceptions this year. Isaac Wilson in backup duty and spot starting duty has 6 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So obviously you look at that and say, playing against one of these guys gives us a chance to win. The other one, maybe not so much. So yeah, you root for Isaac Wilson to be the guy. But they played this weird shadow game with whether or not Cam Rising is healthy for so long that you just have no choice but to prepare for him. As far as what they do in the running game, they're always pretty strong in the running game, but this year, not so much. It really all falls to Micah Bernard, who is another one of those players who's been in college football a long time. I think this is his 6th year. People might remember Micah Bernard from having to switch to also play cornerback and go both ways toward the end of the season a couple of years ago for Utah. He's a good player. He's averaging 6.7 yards per carry. Him and Cam Rising are a lot older than most of their opponents. But he is a very, very good player. You'll have to watch out for Micah Bernard. At receiver, they typically are not great at getting the ball to their wideouts, but they do have Dorian Singer, and you should recognize that name. He was a former University of Arizona Wildcat walk-on who became sort of a freshman star for Arizona, and then was one of many players to leave for USC mysteriously in the transfer portal after the 21 season at University of Arizona. So he was buried on the depth chart at USC and ended up transferring to Utah, where he's doing very well. He does not have a touchdown yet this year, but he does have 360 yards receiving. He's their leading receiver, ahead of Brent Keithy, who you might remember as superstar tight end who has had a lot of success against Arizona State in the past. Defensively, this is a good team. Van Fillinger is one of the best pass rushers in all of college football. They've got some other very good players on that defense. Some legacy guys. I think Junior Tafuna, Sion Fotu, Logan Fano. I think they've all got siblings in college football, some of which went to Utah. And yeah, it's a good defense. It's not their best defense. They even have a Maroon and I, who is, I believe, Bradley and I's little brother. So they've got kind of a family legacy thing going on there. It's not the most skilled defense they've ever had, but it is solid. Still coached by Morgan Scalley, who's been there forever, head coach in waiting forever. Secondary still coached by Sharif Shaw, who's been there forever. So you kind of know what to expect from this defense. They're going to be very tough. They're going to be very disciplined. You kind of have to out-athlete them, and that's where guys like Raleek Brown maybe being healthier and being worked back into the offense against Kansas last week with 7 or 8 touches. Maybe he's somebody that they're able to unleash against this Utah defense. Again, just very, very solid team. How they lost to Arizona, I'm not sure. Obviously, having Isaac Wilson at quarterback, his first big challenge, him turning the ball over, that can all factor in. But University of Arizona hadn't really shown that they could play defense like that up to that point. So that game was very much a surprise. Arizona State has not had a lot of luck in recent years against Utah. Obviously, there's the 55-3. If you remember back to 2019 when Jaden Daniels was just a freshman, Ladarius Henderson was 17 years old trying to block one of 3 future NFL defensive linemen that they had starting on that defense. John Penasini, Bradley and I, and Lecky Fotu, just monsters on the defensive line. ASU couldn't do anything about it. And then obviously, you get through the pandemic and last year, and it's been tough sledding. But Arizona State, prior to that, a lot of success against Utah, especially in Tempe. So, I'm not saying that anything could happen. I do very much believe that it is pretty dependent on whether or not Cam Rising is on the football field. He does make that a completely different team when he's in command of the offense. But it's not going to be 55-3. I can guarantee that. So let's go ahead and move on into our Todd of the week. And that will get us into a quick uniformity segment from our guy Cole Streeper. And then let's get into Sun Devil signs. Okay, so before we get into our Todd of the week, and if you don't know what the Todd of the week is, it's a reference to Todd Graham, the former Arizona State coach, who in his time here would go out, give speeches, raise money, donated some of his own money, spent a lot of time and energy campaigning to spread the gospel of Arizona State, while had some success as a coach, but that eventually started to falter as assistants move out of town. And the whole thing is he did a lot for Arizona State. He went above and beyond for Arizona State. And some might even say maybe he did too much for Arizona State and didn't necessarily always have his focus on the job at hand. So that the spirit of the Todd of the week is somebody who goes above and beyond for Sun Devil athletics. For this Todd of the week, we're actually going to need quite a bit of context. And for that, I have a recording here from my guy Cole Streeper. You might recognize him as Uniformity on Twitter, and who does the Uniformity articles on Devil's Digest. So I'm going to go ahead and play that for you now.
Hey, Ralph. Thanks for having me on the Forecast. For those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Cole Streeper, and I write Uniformity for Devil's Digest. And for those of you who don't know what Uniformity is, it is my column that I write on a week-to-week basis about ASU football's uniforms. As we know, we have quite a bit of variation. We have for quite a few years. This is my 10th season writing it, and I've seen a lot of cool stuff come through that equipment room and hit the field.
Apologies. Let me see if I can bring that back up.
In the room,
get back to Cole.
For those of you who have paid attention and have seen any type of uniform announcement, you will know that this week is the Blackout theme game. But something is amiss. The uniform that we're wearing for the Blackout is not black at all. In fact, it's maroon. And last week, we wore a maroon monsoon uniform, which happens to be all maroon. Maroon helmet, maroon jersey, maroon pants, which is exactly what we're seeing this week. Now, there is some variation this week. We are wearing a black pitchfork decal with gold trim, also a black center stripe on the helmet with gold trim, and a black face mask on the helmet. So that ties into the Blackout theme. But let's talk about why ASU is not able to field a black uniform for this game. So in 2023, Adidas switched ASU over to a new template. That new uniform template features maroon jerseys and white jerseys, and then maroon pants, gold pants, and white pants. Those are the base uniform templates. Those are the only things that were provided. So in past years, ASU has always had black, white, and maroon jersey templates. And then for the pants, they've always had black, maroon, gold, and white. So for this generation, which took over last year in 2023, like I said, that's not a viable option because they don't exist, at least for this particular template. But we wore Blackout uniforms last year. Yes, we did. ASU had 2 games, in fact, where black uniforms were worn. And one of those was the alternate game, the Ghost Story, as some of you may remember. The black-based uniforms that had gold numbers and white glow-in-the-dark trim. They also put out some pretty cool retail stuff about that. Hopefully some of you picked that up. Really cool stuff, especially for the kids. And then they also had the traditional Blackout game in which they wore black uniforms. Now, if you remember, we had seen the same template for quite a few years. From 2018 to 2022, Arizona State had the template with the state flag sublimated on the jersey. But all three jerseys had this: the maroon, the white, and the black. And then that black had kind of a sweater look texture, kind of a heathered black look to it, and it made the state flag really, really visible on the chest, which was a really cool feature. Well, there was enough of that left over in 2023 to distribute out to the team. However, that was the swan song. That was the final curtain for that uniform. We've seen blackouts in the past, and we haven't had black helmets for quite a few years now, but we've always had black jerseys and pants. Just not the case this year. So we are going to see a full maroon, all dark uniform combination. I still highly encourage everybody who's going to the game to wear black, wear your black faniforms, as it were, and get out there and support. And that kind of begs the question, well, why still have a blackout game if there's no black uniforms? I think it's one of those things where, fans look forward to the blackout. It's usually reserved for one of the biggest games, one of the biggest home games of the season. In that case, that's Utah. That fits the bill. right? They come in writing some preseason hype as far as challenging for a Big 12 conference championship. They're currently ranked in the top 20, and it's a Friday night primetime game. I mean, this has the quintessential Blackout game written all over it. So, everybody's wearing Blackout in the crowd. They're boisterous, they're rowdy. It's still pretty hot out, so that hopefully can get to the Utah team, and that energy hopefully is what's going to be brought to this. And I think that's what ASU wanted to accomplish by still having this Blackout. So don't let the color of the uniform being worn discourage you. Still wear your black and get out there and support. Should be a good one. 4-1 ASU, surprising a lot of people, and a Utah team ready to come in and give their best. And we want to make sure that they can hear it from the crowd during this Blackout game. So, unfortunately, no black template, but at least we know why now. So appreciate your time, and thank you, Ralph.
Okay, so that was Cole Streeper. And again, known as, he runs a uniformity account on Twitter. He's often on Sun Devil Spaces. He's contributed to Speak of the Devils podcast. He writes for Devil's Digest. He does awesome work. I highly, highly recommend following him and his updates on social media. Just does a fantastic job. And I was going to give Todd of the Week to Cole for going above and beyond to provide that explanation for why we're wearing maroon during a blackout on Friday night. But I can't give it to Cole anymore, and I'm going to let Cole explain why this actually goes this week to Arizona State Athletic Director Graham Rossini. Take it away, Cole.
Hey, Cole Streeper of Uniformity back again. I just wanted to pop in and give a quick update from Arizona State Athletic Director Graham Rossini. I'm recording on Wednesday night about 10:30 p.m. here, and as I was recording, a tweet came through in response to my original tweet posting the article and the uniform and all the images for it, and Graham was able to post this, kind of confirming some of the things I was saying before as far as there being a little bit of confusion, but ASU still really wanting people to wear black and come out and bring some excitement. So I'll go ahead and read off his comments. He says, "Apologies for the confusion. I'll own this one. We prioritized the gold strategy uniform this fall and didn't have enough time to pull off a black one once game themes were set. We could have been more clear when themes were posted. That's on me. But we're still asking fans to wear black. Such a cool scene in the stadium for night games. Come join us and pour some energy into this incredible team of Sun Devils." So there you have it, from the man himself at the top, Graham Rossini. Definitely get out, wear the black, and bring the energy. Thanks again, Ralph. Love the forecast. You're doing a great job. Have a good one, folks.
So there you go. I was going to give it to Cole because he went out of his way to provide this update. Was going to come on Spaces on Wednesday night. We moved it to Thursday. He had a concert to go to, couldn't come on, so he did this instead. And that's all very cool. He did go above and beyond. But what was one of the elements that I said that I included in Todd of the Week was sometimes you go so far above and beyond that maybe, just maybe, you're doing too much. And the reason I say that is Graham Rossini, he's very clearly has his ear to the ground, very clearly understands some of the concerns and complaints that go on surrounding Sun Devil football. And he decides to jump on social media and take responsibility, take blame for any ill will people have about Arizona State having an all maroon uniform set during a blackout on a Friday night. There's certainly bigger problems in the world than this, but he comes on and he says, "Hey, I'll own this. Please still come out. It's still going to be great. We'll put more consideration into it in the future." When the stuff Cole's talking about, like, it happened, in pre Graham Rossini actually being fully responsible for anything like this. And also, to see somebody just come out and take accountability for something and say, like, "Hey, I hear you. We'll do it different next time," is very, very cool. But when I say maybe it's doing too much, it's because a lot of people did jump online to say, "Hey, check it out. Graham Rossini is interacting with the fans. Isn't that great?" But others, and I'm not going to name names, it is pretty funny. Others took it upon themselves to say, "Oh, he's here and he's listening. Here are some of our other complaints." So it turned into a little bit of a if you give a mouse a cookie situation. And for that, for Graham Rossini going above and beyond, and possibly even doing too much to his own detriment, I have to bestow upon him Todd of the week. I'm sorry, Cole. Maybe next time. Now let's get into our Sun Devil sign segment where I count down 5 signs that you might want to bring to this game against University of Utah. Okay, so this week for Sun Devil signs, I crowdsourced ideas, believe it or not. Did not come up with all these on my own, and I'm not going to put them in order this time. We're just going to go through them, and I'm going to provide a little bit of judgment. And you can send these to me as well. Hashtag Sun Devil signs, or just DM them to me on Twitter at Ralph Amsden. Here are the suggestions this week for Sun Devil signs that you can bring to an ASU game to have a go at Utah fans. So in no particular order, I'm going to go through the list that I was sent this week. Here's one. G. Homer Durham was ASU's worst president. That's a deep cut. G. Homer Durham was ASU's president from 1960 to 1969. Hardly the worst president, I think, considered like the time of greatest growth, like more than doubled in size under his watch. And he actually kind of made it more of a university, like brought in the arts and stuff. So, but he was a Utah graduate, so that's a shot at him, I suppose. I don't know if anybody would get that one. I appreciate it. Here's another one. You owe all your success to BYU. This is in reference in a picture of Kyle Whittingham's face. So Kyle Whittingham, their long tenured head coach, I think second longest tenured head coach in all of college football, is a BYU graduate. And then there's a twofold thing too, because Utah, for as much as they hate BYU, they were founded by Brigham Young. That was his whole deal. He started University of Utah, and they hate Brigham Young University. But I guess it's true in more than one way. They owe all of their success to Brigham Young and Brigham Young University for raising up Coach Kyle Whittingham. Here's a good one. Mark Harlan still smells like Tucson. Mark Harlan is the athletic director at University of Utah, and he's a 2-time University of Arizona graduate, worked there on multiple occasions as well. You know, he's going to be rooting extra hard against the Sun Devils on Friday night. This is a good one. This is one that was suggested sort of in Sun Devil spaces. I took some liberties with it, but Tempe equals temple without the L. So, I mean, marginally creative, funny. I like it. I like that one. Here's one you probably definitely shouldn't bring to the stadium, but one that was sent to me. Scottsdale has better snow than Park City. I do believe that's a drug reference. And then here's a fun one for any fans out there of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, one of the messiest shows in the history of television. If you don't know what that is, I want to be your friend. Because you have your priorities in order. And if you do know what this next sign means, I also want to be your friend, because you're an absolute mess, and you understand the most niche pop culture references. But it's just a picture of a woman named Jen Shaw, and it says, "It smells like hospital in here." Let me explain why that's funny. Jen Shaw is a character on the show Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. She is the wife of Sharif Shaw, the defensive backs coach for University of Utah. University of Utah's defensive backs coach not only had him and his wife on a reality show for the last couple of years, but she also went to prison in it. And one of her most famous freakouts was like in the very first episode of the show, where she claimed that someone told her that it smells like hospital in here, and she took that as an insult and absolutely lost her mind, and that set the tone for the entire show, really. She's wild, and now she's doing like a 6-year prison stint, and her son is on the team, Omar Shaw, and her other son also played for Utah, and her husband, again, is the longtime defensive backs coach. I don't know how appreciated that would be. I would laugh if I saw a giant poster of Jen Shaw and it with the caption, "It smells like hospital in here." I don't imagine Utah's players would appreciate that too much. But yeah, that's a deep cut. And then here's quite possibly the worst idea for a sign to bring to the stadium, but one that it will really poke at something that's been going on at Utah for a while. Head coach, this is the sign, head coach, comma, the letter N, waiting. So it says head coach N waiting. And I guess if you want a context on that, just Google Morgan Scally head coach in waiting text messages. If you Google that, that will give you some hint as to what the sign that says head coach, comma, the letter N waiting means. Yeah, I'd imagine that the Utah fans who knew what that one meant, they would not enjoy that one very much. That's it for Sun Devil signs. You can, again, just hashtag it on Twitter or send them to me. We'll go through them every week. As far as a prediction for the game, this is a Friday game. Try to keep this show short. Ended up going an hour anyway. But as far as prediction for this game, honestly, it's conditional. If Cam Rising plays, I like Utah to win this. They're so much better with him on the field. You can make all the age jokes you want. He's a special college football player, college with an asterisk. But he's done a fantastic job becoming a leader. I mean, he was voted team captain before he was named starter, right? Like voted by the team when the coaches wanted Charlie Brewer to start. He's been a special guy out there. And if he plays, I think they win this game. And I think it's probably like 34-21. If it's Isaac Wilson, it's anybody's game. And I'll even give Arizona State the benefit of the doubt with them being the home team. And we'll call it 27-24 Arizona State. Again, if Cam Rising plays, I think this is a 34-21 Utah game. I think he makes that big of a difference. Isaac Wilson plays, we'll go 27-24 ASU. And I got to be honest, if ASU moves to 5-1, I'm going to be as ignorant a fan as there ever was, and I expect all of you to be one as well, because 4.5 wins was the prediction for the season, and to think that we could get that 6 games into the season, could be an incredible thing. We will see. Sun Devil Spaces every Wednesday night. CharlieHustle.com. Use the code 101215 to buy your ASU gear and support this podcast and the 1012 Podcast Network. And that's all I got. We'll end this show the same way that we end Sun Devil Spaces. If you live with a heart of gratitude, the world's a wondrous place. Forks up, go Devils. We'll catch you on the Forkcast next week.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.